This Plein Air Easton special live event is brought to you by PNC Wealth Management, committed to putting you first. Visit pnc.com to explore what PNC Wealth Management can do for you. That's an interesting thing too.
Yeah,
you just pop it in your Velcro?
Yeah, my Velcro with my little baby
Some weekends seem to last forever when nonstop applications become nonstop discovery. And in the heart of Maryland's Eastern Shore hides an annual haven of art, instruction, and entertainment. The country's largest outdoor painting competition, Plein Air Easton. There, you can trade in the ordinary routine for an energetic festival, exchange housework for a night or two at a bed and breakfast, and swap never enough time with we should do this more often. Take a weekend for yourself to explore, to paint, to experience something new. Your immersive art weekend begins at pleinaireaston.com.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Al Bond. I'm the CEO of the Avalon Foundation, and I want to welcome you all here to the Avalon Theater. For those of you who are watching us on Facebook or YouTube, we welcome you too, and you should know that there's about a 30-second delay, so if you're making any comments back or have questions, there's going to be a little bit of a delay time before we're able to ask those questions and respond to them. So that is there. What we're doing here is part of a project to sort of re-engage with alumni painters from Plein Air Easton's 15 years of competition. And the thought behind this whole thing really comes from last fall when we were thinking about the fact that there was 15 years, and we talked about the sort of celebratory nature of that, but really the attention and focus went towards the gratitude that the Avalon Foundation and really the whole community has towards the artists, the phenomenally talented people who were involved in our event over the many, many years. And so we thought, wouldn't it be a great thing to invite them back to be part of our celebration and also to thank them for being part of the creating the success that Plein Air Easton has become. So that's sort of the beginning point, and that's grown into a number of activities. Certainly the coffee and conversations, there have been 2 of them so far. There will be 2 more, so tomorrow morning at 10, and then again the following morning, Thursday morning at 10 also, the sort of panel conversation that we've been doing. We'd love to have you all come back and participate in that. This one's a little bit different because the coffee and conversations, we have alumni artists who are painting out the day before and then showing their work the following day. Robert Barber is a different kind of painter. And so we wanted to create a space where he could really talk about what he's up to. And certainly Rob has been a part of the Plein Air Easton family since its beginning. He competed in the very first Plein Air Easton and 9 competition years subsequent to that. And we haven't seen him since 2014, so it's a real pleasure to have him back here in Easton. Along with winning the grand prize, he has won many prizes here over those early years. And he developed a reputation for painting very few paintings, but with a lot of time and attention going into them, having a morning painting and an evening painting, and basically turning in sometimes, some years, only 2 paintings. So he's always worked a little bit slow, but apparently he has taken that to a new extreme, and we really wanted to talk about that. And that's actually the reason why this talk is called Plein Air Plus Time. And so it is a real pleasure to bring Rob back to Easton. Yeah, I want you all to give him a big, very warm welcome. Rob, do you want to come on up and talk about what you've been up to? All right, thank you.
Well, thanks a lot. I'm not used to this at all. I just want to make that disclaimer at the beginning, but it's such a treat to come back. It really is. The friendships and everything shared in and around my years in this event just benefited me tremendously. And I appreciate this chance to come back and talk. I think maybe to the degree you know me or not, I guess a short introduction is to say, hi, my name is Rob. I am the opposite of quick draw. So, but I think, you know, as we grow up, I guess I have found so many benefits from maturity and our understanding about who we were and who we are and things like that just keep growing over time. And the confidence in what we as one artist want to do grows along with that. And somewhere along the way, I had gotten this silent kind of calling in my heart to come home and recenter a little bit around, you know, my more grown-up self, we might call it. And so I did that. I found a great quote by Bastien Lepage, who said to a whole generation of art students in Paris, he said, go home and paint what you love. And so I've been doing that and found it utterly, utterly satisfying. It only makes me want to do it more. My wife has nicknamed me a painting monk because I don't mind. You know, I enjoy meeting fishermen and bird watchers and all that at my creek, but I'm just as happy as can be on my painting days, which are, I would say, overall half and half outside over the whole year. I'm outside most of the time in the summer, a lot less time in the winter. Sorry, I'll play my wimp card proudly, but I enjoy very much what I can do in the studio and what I can do outside. I feel like I couldn't do one without the other. They're very synergistic that way. They keep shaping me along my growth, and I kind of liken it. I mean, I've grown to develop a philosophy that helps guide me, and I would say a philosophy is a really good thing to have wherever any artist is on their own journey of development. The more you can become aware of your philosophy, the more it benefits. I liken the experience a little bit to following the breadcrumbs of love that I find in the world and matching them up with the ones that are already in here. And that never leads me to the wrong place when I do that. The plus time part, it's interesting, we're all wired differently. And I would say that this is my chance to say, well, you know, on the flower of diversity, I'm one of the petals over here. And I got that sense this morning. It was such a delightful talk, but I heard my ears, perked up. I heard this magic 2 hours, magic 2 hours. And my own reflection was, I believe you. That's what works really well for you. But my experience is of, oh, the 2 hours, right. Well, now I'm going good. That's how I'm wired. I'm wired with a certain amount of patience. possibly to excess. But that pace is very comfortable. For me, what I look for is not a time frame. I look for that painting happy place. And I just have had confirmation over and over that when I get into the painting happy place, the clock hands do that. And so the time thing becomes, in a way, irrelevant, because inspirations, they come in all shapes and sizes. And so what I do is I kind of submit to the demands of that particular inspiration and just follow it along. And so, by the way, maybe I should also tell you that in the category of overthinking, my wife would happily tell you, yeah, that he leans that way. So I try to keep myself on track as best I can. But I thought I would tell the story of this painting because it's so typical of what my process is like. This painting is titled Fallen in Fall. And I had this little series kind of come up in me about doing fallen trees. And so I was following that along when I found this subject. And I had the experience of, well, I think you all know that artists are kind of sensitive people, where, we're finely tuned. And I've found that one of the differences is, because the beauty of the world is so ample, here's one tone that I often hear, that would make a nice painting. Yeah. And then another tone goes like this, I have to paint that. Did you hear the difference? It's subtle, but I really listen for that inside. And when I hear it, I know it. And so I had that experience with this one. And so for me, one of the things that it happens frequently, and again, we're all wired differently, but I am often, titles just bubble up at the very beginning. And the thing that I don't mind, a kind of thing like that could be really annoying. Leave me alone. I'm trying to start a painting here. But the title, Fallen in Fall, it just, from the very beginning. And the part of that that's very helpful is that it helps me now, okay, now I know what my priorities are. And I guess, I don't know if this is Robert's opinions number 4 or 5. I don't know if anyone's keeping track of that, but one of my opinions is that what and why are always more important than how. And the world and the marketplace, and there are all kinds of interest around the how. I love the way you do, to me, that is just, I am at my best as a painter when I'm not thinking about how I am doing anything. It's that natural response. And so for me, the what and why am I doing this painting is so helpful to know from the very beginning. Because I can tell you that when I showed up the next day after finding it with my paint bag and my viewfinder, and people talked a bit this morning about how often they do sketches. For me, that step, I do it with the viewfinder. And I give it whatever time it needs to, how does it look over here? How does it look over there? This, that. And I just give it time. And sometimes I'll even walk away and then come back and do it again, because I'm looking at different paintings. And I'm looking for, through that viewfinder, the best painting. And at that point, there were these lovely October clouds floating around. And I said, clouds? Maybe? And then I said, Fallen in Fall. Okay, the point of this painting is right here, and this is a glorious backdrop for this. It's one of those times which so many of us learned in art school that less is more. Clouds are lovely, sorry, no room for them. And as I look at it, even the lovely cloudy day, so many times that spot is empty anyway. So this part of the experience, I should tell you, and I think it's helpful in life as we go along to have columns, what I know, what I don't know. And having operating columns like that can be helpful. And it is the same in doing a painting. I call this part of it sticking Post-it notes on my brain of question marks. And the question marks, so the clouds, yes, no, that one, I can peel it off and put it away. What time of day is this? Is another one of the question marks. And how about that water? Another question mark. And what I've come to understand with this, even with many, many difficult days, to trust the process. And the process that I've learned is that not only am I here as the artist who's chosen to do this painting, I want to get to know this thing, you know, and sure enough, this is a living thing, and it's going to tell me its story. And what a great partner to have, this thing, this living thing that I'm trying to paint. And so I've learned to just, it's okay to have these question marks. Where can I start? And so the first entire day is done in sketching it out and spending that little bit of time. It just takes a little bit of discipline to the viewfinder and, you know, keep coming back and what's halfway to what and a third of the way to what, getting it laid out. And I knew this is a great place to start. I actually knew that in order to paint these, I needed to start with the sky and their backdrop. So that was my starting point, because did I ever know that? And color is so relational, entirely relational, that I start with best guesses. And I have best guesses for these main elements that I just kind of put in, and then I call this next little moment pause and ponder, which is, how does it actually look? Is it matching, you know, this glorious thing out there? How is it going so far, even right away? Looking at those relationships, even as abstract blobs, you know, of purple and yellow and gold, and start adjusting. And because it's this thing, you know, that the magic of out there that I'm trying to paint. And one of the experiences of that for me is I really try to be as kind to myself, my flawed self, as possible. I set the bar in the right place, which is, if I get half the glory of this place onto the canvas, it's gonna be fine. It's gonna be fine. And if I get 2/3 of the glory of this place onto the canvas, it's gonna be a really nice painting. So that's one of my consolations as I go along. So I would say I started here. I may have gotten to here on the first day and maybe to here on the second day. And now this thing is becoming, I'm getting to know this thing. And I would say at the end of day 2, I had watched the progress of the sun, which comes toward our viewpoint. By 1 o'clock, this is all in sun, and it looks completely different back here. And that's when I knew, okay, too far. We're somewhere in the middle. And I would say after watching this show the 3rd time, I said, yes, right here at noon, where this tree is half in sun and half in shade, that's the moment. So now one of those important question marks just got answered. Meanwhile, I've had plenty to do, and I think it was day 4. It might have been day 5. I should mention that all along I'm watching the breeze in a setting like this. It's a relatively slow-moving stream. The breeze sends those beautiful blue fingers across the water, because, you know, breeze is not monolithic. It comes in these little fingers, and I was having that reaction of, oh, maybe. That's nice. I even had a couple of, I'm gonna try to remember that one. That was nice, yeah. And so, I'm just living with it. You know, it's okay. It's okay. Again, I've got plenty to do, and I think it may have even been day 5. I showed up, it was dead calm, and this slow parade of leaves down the stream, and here was the face I made. And it was that same thing of, that's it. And I was waiting for that. I was waiting for that moment when I knew what the water should look like. And, you know, it's a little bit like that reaction I mentioned earlier, that I must paint that. It makes me feel like we could all tell all the young people, you just know, you know, to the important questions in life, you just know. And it's like that with each of these question marks. Until I know, just live with that as a question, because this thing is going to tell me its story. And as I said, it's at times there are painful moments and days of, gee, it would be nice to know. Can it please hurry it up and let's find out? But it's that reward of patience that helps you endure it the next time. Because by the time I worked my way around and I had the water, and the time I think I finished going this way. I finished with this tree here in the end. And I would guess 15 days. But if you told me, actually we have the records, Robert, it was 14, or if you told me 20, I would say, okay, sure. I don't count the days because I don't care about the days. I want to paint that glory, you know, about this big, and how long it takes, I don't care. One thing I guess is worth mentioning again about this whole understanding potentially the title, but just the point of the painting from the beginning, is it helps you keep everybody. It's sort of like being a theater director. You know, you've got the soprano solo here, that it's we got to make space for that. And even though the point of the painting is here, but then everything else, it has a supporting role. And that's one of the things that we kind of have to keep track of in our mind when we're telling the stories of our subjects. And my wife noticed this little leaf down here. We could almost say, is this that person that said, you know, in the theater, I am the lone leaf, and I will play the lone leaf like it has never been played. You know, maybe the director was, okay, that maybe that got overdone slightly, but as the lone leaf, I was happy with it in the end. So I mentioned, you know, the gifts of maturity, but for me, you know, having lived through several of these kinds of experiences, you know, with inspirations coming at different shapes and sizes, I guess the part where you know, I want to rush to the end, I want to know, and yet again the kind of understanding that this is a living thing, and I want to just listen to it, because it's a marvel in its own way. You know, the stories that get told, and it winds up being such an organic process. I guess I was thinking, you know, sometimes you hear people, I guess, offering philosophies of living with no regrets, or, you know, some ideas like that. At the end of a painting like this, not only do I have no regrets, I spent the time with this thing, I grew along with it, I listened to it, it was delightful, and if I went back next year, it would be completely different. You know, so when I wind up finishing up here, not only do I have no regrets about, well, maybe I should have done the blue fingers and the one, it's like, no, it was all good, you know, and it took just each of those days, you know, it told me the story over those days, and I was just happy to be there to listen. So I think, you know, in my work, and as I said, following those breadcrumbs of love, and to see where they take me, I've gotten a greater sense of having an artistic path. And one of the dimensions that can sound frightening in a way, because we think, well, what if I want to change course, you know? But this is a part of that maturity thing. And one of the consolations is that the path has width. There's width to the path. And over here is, I guess, a good example of a part of my own width. I really enjoy figurative work, and I decided to start doing paintings out of just pure love. This is, you get to meet my family in these paintings. This is my daughter, Sophia, and here she is at, I think, about age 7. I can't quite paint at the speed of life, and so, but I thought, you know, I can paint some of the highlights of this marvel of seeing this young person grow up. And so this, I will call this maybe a hybrid painting, because I do studio work, and I do use photography for what it's good for, which is us getting a golden snapshot of a split-second moment like this. And however, having this kind of zeal for color and the colors of life that I have and live with, I was able to, since this is our side yard, paint the rest of the painting from life. So I knew I wanted to start this painting, and I actually started it as a demonstration, and I did the lay-in for the whole thing with that kind of golden snapshot. And in terms of the awareness of the what is this painting about element that I mentioned a little bit ago, I said to the group that I was doing the demo for, if I botched this right here, this whole painting is a waste of time. And so in terms of having priorities, I knew from the very beginning that this painting was about this little person and this act of clipping a flower. One little thing, and I don't mind, by the way, I don't mind disagreement. Someone said, well, what about that tree? Isn't that kind of too strong? And I thought, you know, that's a decent question. And maybe now you're starting to think, they were right. But it's a whole topic, speaking in visual language, the intersection of things. And really, in a world like this, everything has to intersect somewhere. And so you can soften uncomfortable intersections. Like, for example, I knew that the street running into her nose was not a good thing. So subconsciously, so I made sure that that was a softish transition there. But here's another philosophical point. I am very cautious about moving things around. You know, that you'll hear many proponents of these ideas. And that's fine. I'm very cautious, and this is a good example why. Well, why don't you just take that tree out? Well, it might not be evident, but then subconsciously, someone would say, where did that shade come from? Do you know what I mean? And so this is why I'm really careful about that kind of thing. And but the thing is, see, you know, art is big. The tent of art is enormous, and it can happily hold us all. But that I just wanted to shed light or shade on that topic of this is why I'm hesitant to move stuff. Now, I did not mind actually that it runs into her hand, because that's the second point of interest, and I loved the way it created space for these lights here. So I ultimately decided to go with it despite reasonable objection. But the reason that I painted the rest of it from life, it's because if I could, I wish I could, and maybe I should sometime share photos painting from life, so you can see just, you know, my photos stink is the shortest way to say it. And this color, it lives outside. That's where it lives. And so that's why I go outside to paint it. Someone might say, well, wouldn't it be just easier to stand in the studio with the photo? And I would say, well, easy in some sense, but not in some other important ones. My zeal is so much around these colors set a mood that's unlike anything, and we see it with our eyes outside, and that's the color I want to paint. So it's sort of funny, the attitudes around this practice of plein air painting. Sometimes it sounds like it's a worthy charity or something like that. But I paint outside as much as I do for utterly selfish reasons. It's where I have the most fun, and it's where I do my best work. And as I said, my subject, that color, it lives out there. And there's nothing like the confidence of asking yourself the question, what am I trying to paint? Oh, I'm trying to paint that color right there. And that is so delightful because the other scenario is in the studio saying, is it like that or not? I don't know. And I hate that feeling. I hate that feeling because it's that glory out there, you know, that is what is inspiring me. And so I have, maybe this is a good time to share my two other family paintings while we're over there in the world of my two beloveds, my wife and daughter. These are, hopefully you see the connection, you know, the kind of relishing, the mood and color is in both of these as well, even though they're, you know, this is not sunlight we're doing, or in this case it's the absence or near absence of sunlight. This was one of those moments that as a dad, I got out of bed one morning and my heart melted. And I had that, I guess maybe on that occasion it was more of, I must paint that. Maybe. And sorry if that didn't come over the microphone very well. So the title of this painting is Still Asleep. And if any of you are mystery lovers, the clocks do show the time. So I called this painting experience Into the Dim, and it was just so, I just loved it, because the reward was capturing that sense of their piece together. And it's almost related to plein air in the sense that I was able to run up and down the stairs during my painting days to look, what are those colors of that lamp, you know, in the dim light? And that was, again, that confidence of, yeah, it was that warm gold. Well, let me go back up there. You know, so many trips back up and down for these secondary items, and just loving the you know, this is a very gray painting, but that's part of the beauty of it. And so I don't have any, you know, I guess favorite kinds of colors or anything. I really happily, I call it submitting to the what is of the subject. And, you know, again, the color, it can create so many different moods, and to explore, you know, this quiet, peaceful mood, it was just a ball. This one over here is called Knitting Lesson. Kind of similar, maybe, but maybe we could say a more awake painting, I think. Oh, okay, maybe tip it a little bit. Is that better? Okay. Oh, sure. Well, I think I can, yeah, I can. We'll see if I can hold and talk at the same time. So this one, again, I had a golden, actually like 3 or 4 photos that I combined. And the setting is my studio. So I did wind up painting the background from life because, again, it's just, I want to paint what those candles look like in person in life, because the camera reproduction of a candle, it's something else. And so that's why why I, you know, if I have the opportunity to paint from life, I do. And this, again, is just one of those moments of life that my heart said, oh, yeah, I really, really want to paint that. Oh, okay. Well, so I think we can go back to my, I'll take us back outside again with, Yanni, if we can bring that really big one over. And I guess we'll take this one down. Yeah. Or, yeah, here we go. All right. Maybe we'll just lean it like so. Sure. Okay. Yeah. So this painting is called Up, and boy, I didn't tell you that the titles were brilliant. I just said they come at the beginning. And again, I think I mentioned, inspirations come in different shapes and sizes, and one of the senses I get is, well, what will honor this inspiration? Is this a little painting? Is this a big painting? I should mention that's a question mark I do have to deal with before I start painting. I knew, I guess, a certain amount of this at the beginning. This is, I think, to show both, how thoughtful I am and what an idiot I can be all at the same time. When I started this piece, I thought, oh yeah, this is a morning painting for sure. And I worked on sketching it out. This probably took 5 days just to sketch out. And I should tell you that I have nicknamed many of these branches because, boy, did that ever help to know that, oh yeah, I'm biforky and big splitty and curvy. And, but one day I had gotten my, my daily headache and neck ache from looking at this. And I went in for lunch, and then I did something else, and then I said, oh yeah, I should go get my easel. I came back out at 3 o'clock and said, wow, this light effect was happening. And I said, it's not a morning painting. And it caused me some inconvenience, I should mention. I already had a different afternoon painting going, and I had to change plans because at that moment I had that subtle reaction. Wow! And so I converted this from then on into this, and I hadn't gotten very far, so it wasn't so painful to convert it now to this afternoon painting. But I should say that those nicknames have helped because it's funny how often I have been mixing some green paint, looked at the canvas and said, where was I? So I hope that's pretty easy to understand looking at it. But so this is kind of out a little bit on the extreme. Maybe this is the X Games of what I do, because I should tell you, this is my 3rd summer working on this painting. But I don't mind because I knew I wanted to do this painting. And I guess maybe this is a good time to mention, hypothetically, we really can. There is a painting we could do in an hour. There's a painting we can do in a day. And there's a painting we can do in a month. They're just different paintings. And being aware of, well, which one did you want to do? That's what I'm after. And in this case, I knew, after those 5 days of figuring out where all these named branches live, that I was in for a little bit of an adventure. It's that funny thing. I'm hoping, by the way, that this is the last summer of working on it. But it's a funny painting in the sense that I don't know if I'll ever do another one of these again for the rest of my life. And I'm going to be sad when it's done because it has been just a terrific adventure. I should say that it's challenging in the sense of there is this beautiful thing that happens at 3 o'clock. And I'm tiling together many days and many pieces of truth to tell a coherent truth. I should tell you, there's a funny thing that can happen is that while I've painted these wonderful, you know, spotlights of sun creeping through, it's like, oh yeah, I'll paint that in sun, and then the dapple moves over, and you're like, oh, well, we'll paint the sun there too. And before you know it, you start following these spotlights around. It's like, okay, calm down. It's not like that. It's more, there is a little bit of organizational, you know, effort here to go, oh yeah, there are these main spots of sun. And I haven't gotten to the real payoff up here, this warm glow. I'm kind of saving that for a little later. I want to develop this part more, you know, again, because of that color is all relational, and I don't feel confident that I have enough around it just yet. So that's kind of, you know, one of the things I'm looking forward to is that warm glow. Let's see, I think, was there, sorry, I'm just trying to remember if there was anything else I wanted to say about this one. Oh, well, part of the fun is you can see here one little tidbit. This branch used to be here, and now it's there. And it's just funny, you know, that like a squirrel chewed this branch off last winter. To just, it's like a marker of the change of time, you know. But I see we've got a question.
I didn't mean to interrupt, but is this lower section over here, you're still working on that? So
Yes.
That's a previous sitting?
Yeah,
Okay.
right. I ended here, and I'm going to work my way back up. Right. This right half is as far as I know it done, and you know, depending on, I always try to give myself that time to, you know, come to it with a fresh eye. You know, either the next day kind of a thing. And with a piece like this, I know that I may want to reassess certain parts of this once this gets done. So but that's the path of progress with it, is I'm now doing the left side. There is a section up here that's done-ish, and once I get up to this top part, you know, then I'll be able to kind of reassess things. I guess I'll mention a potential, you know, I guess a potential argument that could be had philosophically, and I'll just tell you up front, I'm on the losing end of this one. Since I was quoting, you know, the thoughts of others that don't match mine earlier, I'll try to return the favor here, because I think it does come up from time to time where you know, Al mentioned that sometimes what is plein air anyway? You know, that idea floats around. And I think that's a worthy thing for any, you know, practitioner to ask themselves. And I want to, you know, push a little podium over here for my opponent in this hypothetical argument, who would say there is no day like today, Tuesday, July 16th. And that's what I'm painting, Tuesday, July 16th. And I would applaud and say, well said, well said. That's so true. And it is, and I see it too. I see it too, but. And the but kind of goes like this. When I find myself painting on Tuesday, July 16th, and then coming back Wednesday, and then Thursday rained, so I came back Friday. I find that when I'm adding that Friday truth to the Thursday truth to the Wednesday truth, it's making another kind of truth. It's just a little more general, if you know what I mean, because it is true. There is no day like Tuesday. Never has been and never will be again. There are unique elements to today. But I have found that by getting just that little more general, it's like the painting is more about summer afternoon here. You know, it's not that one day when the sunlight hit there and there and there, exactly like that. You know, now we're into things I don't care about that much. I'm a funny nerd for the truth, but in a certain way. And I'm out there trying to paint those colors because that's where my heart has asked me to go. I love those colors. I can't make up those colors. You know, I have made up stuff in my art education and other parts of my career as an illustrator, it's nowhere near as interesting to me as, wow, I couldn't make that up. And I just love that so much. It just draws me out again and again and again. And so that's kind of my viewpoint on that whole, I don't mean for us to dissolve into different ideas of what is truth, but I think it's just worth mentioning, because while it is true that there is one moment that we could photo document where the dapple there was like that, but it wasn't like that there, I would say, okay, all right. But again, my truth, maybe we could say, it's just a little more general. I'm trying to tell a coherent, singular story. It's taking me a lot of days to get there, but that's just, it's what I want to do. So I think we can bring over, I wrote a little essay to prepare everyone for this. Right now you can be asking yourself, I don't think that prepared me for this. But in the essay, I mentioned that I was going to share some failures. So let's get it, Yanni. It's this one and this one here. So let's get to some failures, shall we? Because by now you might be saying, "Oh gosh, that patient Rob in Pennsylvania, he has no troubles at all. That's great. That is great. I'm so glad it's working for him." Well, this piece was working for me. This had so many elements that I love. It's March, the sun is lowish, the glitter, oh, it was a marvel. And then I loved, especially this contrast with this calm pool down here. I love that, sometimes that comparison of activity and calm. And then this happened. So we could pass this around if you'd like. This is a tree that floated down the stream. We had several high water events last fall and lodged itself in the middle of my composition. So that's when every artist can say, it's not fair. It's not fair. And that's true. But so where do we go from here? Well, I know that they don't like suburban guys to go into public parks with chainsaws on Saturday. I know that. And as outrageous as this is, I can show you that my little lovely pool got filled in with gravel because the water direction changed or something like that. And so I said to myself, after lots of self-pity, what do I do now? And a couple friends the last day have suggested to me, well, just look over it, walk around it. And I see, this is that thing where, again, I'm just a nerd enough. It wouldn't be the same, looking at this glare. It's from a certain perspective, and I want to be able to compare. And so I just said, well, gosh, I'm not sure what I'm going to do. And then I found this one. And so I guess this is a good example of a door closes and a door opens. And this is, while obviously they don't look exactly the same, it had the same inspiration. This is March glitter, and I just loved this spot. This is, I'm standing on a rock over here, and just the movement in it just really captured me. And I was, not grateful that I lost that painting. And it's possible, we'll see, maybe that log will float down. Although it was giving me clues. It's like a root that's like driven into the ground, halfway to the center of the earth. And that tree is not going anywhere. And like an idiot, too, I went over, like, could I move it? Because this thing is like 32 inches in diameter. It probably weighs more than my car, but I tried to push it. Oh, but this painting, I just fell in love with this equally, or in a similar kind of way. And I only got so far, but again, I call this appointment painting. I know what I'm doing next March 1st. I will be back to this spot, at, of course, I guess barring trees floating down the stream. But I want to share just a couple other failures, just so you know. It's not all. So let's see. It's that green one. The green one. I guess that might be the one in back. That could be a point of humor with me. The green one. It's funny. There are attitudes on green, and I understand some of it. It goes even into art history, attitudes about green. And one artist I know that says, I hate summer, I feel like I'm drowning in chlorophyll. And I understand that, but I have a strange enjoyment of green. And so it doesn't scare me away from it. But this has taken its place in this pantheon of failures. This one, I still have hope. I still have hope for this painting. The title of it is Spring in Spring. And I really need to mention that because you might be looking at this going, what the heck is this? And that was actually, believe it or not, that was part of what drew me to it, is that it's very subtle and kind of confusing. And maybe I have a perverse enjoyment of the phenomenon of confusion or something. But so the spring starts here, it trickles down here, and it regreens the world around it, in this very poetic way. And unfortunately, technically, there's some difficulty with this one in that one of the things we painters kind of get to be familiar with is that the direction of the sun is a factor. And it's a factor in this way. If you're looking parallel with the path of the sun, things change more slowly. And when you're looking perpendicular, that's when the world looks like sundials, And this is one of those. And these tree shadows move across this thing. And I have spent more hours than I wish going, I think, yeah, that looks good. That looks good. Okay. No, that looks good. That looks good. Okay, move it over here. So a lot of that. And then the other problem, the bigger problem, that was one problem. The bigger problem with this painting was that I started it in March. It was that beautiful peach gray, March. And started the painting that way, believe it or not. And then April happened, and I went, oh, yeah. April, yeah. And then May came, and I said, oh yeah, May. It reminded, and then I got to the end, I felt like I had just gotten off a roller coaster. And I said, okay, I'm dizzy for a reason. That was nuts. I chased after this season change without having that clear sense yet of, remember those question marks. And so I want to share this because I said to myself, wait a minute, I learned this lesson another time, where I started this lovely crocus painting, which became a lovely tulip painting, and then a lovely daffodil painting. And then, let's just say that was that same lesson of when you don't know enough, but this was not a bad way to both relearn it and learn it for this piece. Now I know, in the cool light of thinking about it, what it said in April, that was it. That was the note that I'm going for. And so now I have as a course, Aprils of the future. I'll be painting spring in spring. Sure, that one is good. So the title of this painting is Summer's End Sparkles. And again, that what is the sun doing and when is it doing it and how fast is it doing it is very helpful to know. And with this piece, I found it right in the middle of its season. And that's why it only got this far. because, and it became very obvious to me, again, that sense of, no, its time has passed. In late October, I was like, the reason that title, Summer's End Sparkles, came up was because that was its time. And again, that sense of these questions getting answered, I knew that one early on. I was very happy with what I was seeing and knew it was a late September, early October painting. And that Path of the Sun, this is in sun here and in shade from here over, and that interplay is just beautiful. And I guess I should mention too, another thing I heard earlier, to keep the argument going, right? Because we can't have peace, love, and understanding here, is our friend Kirk had mentioned that, oh yeah, the glare was so bright over there, you just had to look away. And I felt like, no, the glare is worth looking at. It is so beautiful. And so you might see that as a mini theme in some of my works. I'm not afraid of the glare. And in fact, sometimes it is such a beautiful subject that it's worth, this is the star of the show in this one. There are these wonderful dapples of sun down here in this one. And that's why this area is non-committal. Because again, I find that having enough of the shaded areas in place before attacking those dapples is really helpful in terms of being confident that those color relationships are actually relating right. I read a biography once of I think an Australian impressionist, and this one critic just skewered him. He said, oh, that artist and his dapples, I mean, they're like a tick for him, dapples, dapples. And I felt like, hey, Mr. Critic, have you ever seen a dapple? I mean, dapples are awesome. If you haven't loved a dapple, that's a you problem. That is not a problem. And I do really enjoy them. The problem with them is sometimes they're like little race cars, It's like, wait a minute, you were over there 5 seconds ago. And so they're challenging in a way, but then also utterly charming in that way. And I find myself leaning on a philosophical point that the Spanish painter Joaquin Sorolla made, was he felt that over his lifetime of work, the way you can capture that sense of a fleeting moment is to paint it rapidly. And so I find myself experiencing that of, yeah, when I paint those dapples like the wind, they look more like the dapples look than if I were to patiently, so feather the edge or something. And I guess we should put an asterisk when I say paint like the wind. That's, my version of painting like the wind. But that's what it feels like. I am, in my experience, in my mind, I'm painting like the wind when I am painting something that is that kind of fugitive and transitory. And I find that it really does. I find myself saying, thank you, Joaquin, you were right, because in the times that I have succeeded with painting those dapples with real energy, they do feel more like they do in life. And so that's just one item along the way. So I think, let's see, we'll bring this one up, that one with the handle there, because it has some dapples in it. Those tricky little race cars. And this one it's about this, I found, this one, I guess it's worth mentioning, sometimes the inspiration can sort of, it almost has a germination and maturation phase. I knew I really liked this spot. It didn't scream at me right away like others have, but the more I thought about it and revisited it, it won me over. And what had occurred to me that, oh, now I think I understand why I liked it so much. This is a very energetic, moving, bright stream here. And it comes into this pool, it gets perfectly still. And it was the peace of it and that contrast that that's what it was that spoke to me about this piece, was the peace of this pool. And then when I thought, oh yeah, you know, sometimes my thoughts grow, and I thought, gosh, it's like the pool of the soul in a way, you know, that is searching for peace on some level or at different times, and the activity of life. And maybe this is a good time to mention that one of the things I love about representational painting, well, sometimes we are seen or cast as the old-fashioned folk. One of the things I love about representational painting is that not everything is only what it is. You know, here I am at this stream and having these experiences of contemplating the activity of life and the peace that the soul can seek. And that's part of what I think can live in some of this very familiar subject matter. You know, there's more there necessarily than only just this stream. And when I noticed, by the way, afterwards, that this pool, it almost looks like a tipped heart. You know, if you go around like this, it kind of makes a heart shape. Then I was like, oh yeah, I'm all in now. So this is my morning summer painting with those delightful running around sundapples. And maybe it's a good moment to reference a very practical item that's unfortunately part of the romance of what we do, but it's connected to my real love of the way color is, you know, in light and life. And one of the practical issues in color is value. And you'll notice that like these spots of light are very close in value to this light out here, this reflected sky. But it is just a tiny bit darker, which we can see where the dapples creep into that sky reflection. That's part of that reward of just really looking at it, and the reward of being curious. I find that curiosity is one of my favorite tools in the paint bag because it gets rewarded so often. You know, I think in education there are many, I think, rules of simplification and helping to organize our thinking around things. But I myself just find so often that I just want to be curious about what does it actually look like? And by asking that question over and over, I find surprises all over the place. You know, that's just the way these things work, the way these marvelous, you know, electromagnetic waves of energy called light and color work. And so I did want to mention how much I enjoy that curiosity component and the surprises that come along with it. And again, you know, it's that sensation of, wow, I didn't expect it to be that green. You know, I wouldn't have made that green up, but there it is, there it is. And so that's you know, part of my ongoing enjoyment. So I think we can bring up these four maybe. Here, I'll take. We can probably put. Although now that I look at it, let's see. Well, how about this? I'll put them on this easel over here. We're discovering the degree of how far we went with our planning here. But so I wanted you to know, though, that it's not only, you know, large, lengthy pieces I do. I also do much more conventional duration and size plein air paintings, because sometimes inspirations are for that little tidbit of something. And these two pieces I can tell the story. This one I had wanted to paint rain clouds for a while, and so I just kept one eye on the weather forecast for a day that had that something below 50% chance of rain, but some chance. And so it worked out. I went to my daughter's elementary school backyard. It's a great place to paint in the summer. And the progress of this painting was I did start with a lovely sky. I started this background, and then this sky happened. And this was one of those times of, you make that face of, that's it. So I got out my scraper, and then I just quickly, again, my version of painting like the wind, painted this sky. And so this is a part of what I love about oils, this ability to change course if, the artist knows, yeah, different sky, go. I love that about oils, because that's how life is sometimes. You thought you had the right sky, then this better sky happens. And so that I just wanted to make sure to get to share that story with you. And again, the curiosity of, okay, so it's cloudy and it's green grass, but what green is that? I would not have guessed that it's that green, but standing there looking at it, oh yeah, it's that green. And that's again, I guess I find that so many things in art, I think the best advice I could give to anyone who's in development is you have to do your way through. You can only think your way so far in anything. And each painting is a feedback of, what was it like to be me that hour? What was it like to be me that day? And it guides you, the painting this way. How does that feel? Does it feel like you? But it's more, you just want to look for what rewards you. You, or if you're not sure you, don't worry. There's a you that will tell you that worked, that didn't work, that worked. And so this is what the doing of lots of small paintings helps with. It helps guide you along, your own development. It certainly has guided me. I think so little now about how I'm doing what I'm doing, because I've been doing it long enough that I just get lost and love getting lost in that. I call it the communion with the subject. It's just, I'm there to listen to it tell me its story or its stories. So this painting was 2 sessions. I had the first day of doing about half of this background and finally getting the right sky, and then doing the foreground the following day. This painting, they might look similar, but I don't know why, and I kind of don't really care why. This one took 5 sessions. And it's just following this thing, telling me its story, and just enjoying the heck out of the fact that, gosh, I really, if you had told me, Rob, can you paint a cornfield in sun with middle ground and background trees? I'd say, well, yeah, I could. I don't want to just sit at home and make one up, but I could. And part of the fun of doing this painting is I wouldn't have made these greens, but looking at them, what a delight to get. There it is. That shadow color gets strangely purple. I wouldn't have guessed that. And this is, again, part of that, just the fun of discovering, these little things along the way. So I'll here trade, put these 2 up. So I do paint outside in winter some, and this was a meadow that I discovered not far from my house, and I knew I wanted to paint it. I love a wild meadow, nature, to her own business, and this was in actually early March. It snowed, and I thought, oh, this is great. And with some painting spots, this was one where I was just waiting for someone to yell at me that it was their property and I had no right to be there, but that didn't happen. So it all worked out. And believe it or not, this was a single session painting. Maybe I paint faster when I'm cold. I don't know. This painting here is just my own garden. Flower gardening is my hobby, and this painting, it was a Plein Air Easton-like experience. The sweat was pouring off of me while I was standing in the sun painting these rose mallows. And but this was probably, I think, 3 days for this one. A furious first day of painting the flowers, because these these flowers are kind of one-day flowers, and also sketching in where these shadows are of the flowers on the leaves. And then I spent another day or two painting the leaves after the flowers had faded. And this is that thing again. You know, those colors, I just dive in with delight over those colors, and it's only because I'm just looking right at it. You know, I could not make that up. I wouldn't have guessed. It doesn't fit a formula. And it's so fun to just see and respond. You know, with I'm giving you a picture of what my painting happy places are like. It's that see it and respond to it with color. So let me end with just one other kind of painting that I do. I know artists really enjoy nocturnes. My favorite way of doing them is from memory. And so that's what this one was, driving over a bridge. And I did stay in my lane while doing that. But and this is, I guess, maybe, you know, the technical aspect to this is it's all about those color relationships and the relational nature of color. It just, when the inspiration really seizes, you know, I just try to do my best at remembering how all those colors are relating to each other. And then when I come back to the studio with an inspiration like this, just letting it out. And so that's another thing that I do is my nocturnes are usually from memory. So, well, that's, I think, you know, most of my show and tell. I would love to answer any questions or comments that anybody might have. Yeah. The large, wonderful tree, that's in my side yard. Yeah. Yeah, so some inspiration you don't have to go far for.
Can you Rob, repeat the question?
Oh,
or
sure.
I can hand the
Happy.
microphone
Someone
out to
asked,
people if
you know,
they
the
want to.
large vertical pine tree painting, asked where is it? And it's actually in my side yard. So I don't have to go far for that one. Oh, okay, okay. Yeah?
How do you feel about Antonio Lopez Garcia? You know who he is, right? He works on paintings for like 15, 20 years.
Oh, okay. No, I actually don't know that name.
Oh, okay.
So, okay.
Yeah. In Spain.
In
Look
Spain?
him up. I think
Okay.
you'll enjoy him.
Sure.
You might want to go paint with him.
Sure. Yeah, right. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And by the way, I share, you know, my philosophies, methods, and all that, not with any. I think one of the things about philosophy, it's not meant to compare one person's to another in the sense of which one is better or smarter or anything. Hopefully it just sheds light on your own. And I think that was my motivation to share what you know, pulls me to painting the way I do. It's the rewards of my own wiring, you know, and again, listening to those chords of love inside. But it's not meant to say, you should work this way also, or anyone else should work this way. It's nice to know there's someone that is maybe even more patient than I am. Yes. Yeah.
We've watched your painting for probably 8 or 9 years. And remember the oak tree in front of the church?
I do, yeah.
We walked past that every day, and it would evolve. You must have been under tremendous pressure because it's a pretty short period for you.
Right.
But every day you can see the detail you would lay on top of that trunk.
Okay.
Remarkable.
Okay. Well, that was a mini labor of love in the sense that, you know, all compressed into 5 days. it's funny how well we artists, I think, remember the places we paint too, because for me now, I can't walk around town without going, oh yeah, that painting, oh yeah, that painting. It just gets kind of fixed at us that way.
Beautiful.
But thanks.
May I ask a technical question?
Sure.
So since you're doing for a long period of time,
Right.
so but what I see from your not finishing pieces, so they're very flat. So do you just take it off, whatever? If you, I don't know, just kind of, can you elaborate on your technical process a little bit?
Sure. Well, I love that. I think that school of thought is called the direct painting method, which is just painting with more or less the majority of the time with straight mixed paint, you know, and putting it there as a direct response to the color you see. And I do a little bit of washes or thinning the paint occasionally when I really want to move it around more fluidly. But I found that technically you have to be cautious with that in the sense that when you liquefy paint, it gets lighter, but it's going to dry back down where it started before you liquefied it. So that's like, I always try to remember that is a technical problem or issue with the washy painting approach. While very good and for many things technically, and I do thin paint to make them more fluid, a little bit here and there, but because I'm so fixated on, you know, those colors and exactly how they're relating, I'm more comfortable with more of that straight paint just piling and piling next to each other to get those relationships working. I find that the wash works really well as an underpainting because, and you can see it in Sargent's work, he worked in watercolor and oils in tandem for the second half of his career. And one of the things that I see as an art historian, although no one has asked me to write any articles, but one of the things I see is I can see his oil painting getting affected by his watercolor painting. He worked more and more in a watercolor method in the sense of working from light towards dark. And as much as it pains me to make any concession to watercolor painters, it is often the most efficient way to get there. And while I enjoy, you know, piling on highlights on things, I notice how often it is most expedient to put a blue wash in and then paint all the trees in front of the sky, kind of thing. And that's the thing that I saw more in Sargent's work, that working from light to dark and semi-transparently, as if the watercolor painting was affecting his oil painting. And so I have that in mind myself, and that's why I start on a white canvas. I love having that registration to white. That's actually really useful information, because when you're looking at your lightest lights and you're saying to yourself, you know, another one of our romantic questions, I think that's a value 1. That's actually really good to know. And it is good to have organizational thoughts like that. Like, I think this setup it's a 2, 3, 6, you know, in terms of that, like 10 value scale thing. It's helpful to have that, again, since we're sticking Post-it notes on the brain, you know, that 2, 3, 6, don't go too far out of that setup for this. And I find that white, that can be really helpful if I am, for example, doing a pink wash, if that's the color feel to those sparkles, that's just this down from white. That's a great place to start as I build the stuff around it. And it's the same with like a sky, you know, if I say that's about a value 2, sometimes that fast blue wash, just to get something there, is really helpful. And so I will do these wash paintings just to get something there, figure out where everything's going, and get some color relationship started. And then as I build the kind of more finished paint on top of that, what I find is that it's so far so good because we're taught that that's a healthy mechanism to go from thin to thick. The problems happen where you revisit passages, and now you're putting paint over paint. And that's where, as it dries, the term of the oil has sunk, meaning it's gotten pulled in. And so you might have passages that are now looking chalky. So sometimes I'll wait for those to dry, and in summertime, sometimes that's, wait 12 hours and it's dry. And I will re-oil those passages as I go. That's one technical thing I do, is just lightly brush into hopefully the fully dry areas, that little bit of oil to get them back to their wet paint look. Because that chalky paint now, it's not showing you the color that you actually painted there now. So that's one of the technical things that I do to keep that color relationality thing going as I move along. But painting in sort of just direct paint over a wash on a canvas, it's a very healthy, approach mechanically, and it works well for me visually. But the technical difficulties come in when you start painting over previously painting passages, and I do that all the time. But that re-oiling the areas as I go along is what helps with that. Yeah.
So you don't do a traditional Versailles because that would cover too much. That would be too much color, and you leave a lot of white.
Yeah.
And then you put when you do the wash, you do the wash with more directly with colors.
Yes. Yeah.
And not with just one color, like at Versailles.
No.
Okay.
Yeah. Those indirect steps, there's something in me that is horrified by the indirect painting methods, and that's just me. I really enjoy, believe it or not, getting to the finish as fast as possible, but working in a way. The thing that I dislike about any of the indirect painting methods is that I think there's a human tendency to say, well, I've put a lot of work into it so far, it's good enough. And for me, those color relationships are of such both joy and importance. I love being able to adjust, and so that's all my philosophy leans me toward just painting directly and in tandem, having colors working together that are done, and asking myself, is this done one relating correctly to that done one? That's where I live. That's where I want to live. And so, steps to get to that, I would prefer to not feel like, again, that human nature thing to say, I've put so much work into it so far, I think I should stop now. When, what I'm really after might still be, need a little bit more.
So you work with a small kind of section?
Yes. Yeah. So asking about, do I just work on a small section? Yes. Yeah. It's funny to me sometimes too how some passages go very quickly, and it makes you feel really powerful. And then other passages, how could it take me so long to paint that? But they just do. But I try to understand what it is I'm after, for that episode. And it's part of that kind of patience thing where I didn't paint those sun dapples in that pool until I had enough around it, and I knew I was ready, and when they showed up, I knew they were coming, and I could just dive in and paint them. But if I didn't get them right, I feel no qualms about just redoing it the next day. I like to console myself by saying anything done can be undone and redone. And that's my approach to it, because I'm after it, that when it feels right, you know it, and that's what I'm after.
So you just wipe it for what you do if you feel wrong, or you just leave it and then?
It depends. It depends. I've many a time gone to bed thinking, I think that didn't go quite right. I'll figure it out in the morning, and then the next morning, I should have scraped that off. So, you know, I do the right thing and the wrong thing in equal measure, and it can help to scrape down lots and lots of rills of paint. That can be very helpful. If you know it's wrong, I do that too. Like with that sky that I knew, the better sky just gave, I just scraped it.
Okay, I think that it's probably time for us to wrap this up. Rob, thank you so much for coming back to Easton. It really feels like you have been on an artistic journey that is almost a spiritual journey, finding the esoteric and the mundane, the things that are just in your backyard, and really, really grateful for you sharing it with us. And for those of you out there in Facebook land, again, we're going to have our coffee and conversations tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. We'd love to get you back. If anybody wants to come for that too, again, we'd love to see you. Again, this is the work of the Avalon Foundation and Rob Barber, phenomenal painter who was a real part of the Avalon family in the early years of Plein Air Easton, and is a big part of how we were successful. So again, we are enormously grateful to you in so many ways. Thank you, Rob.
Thanks. Oh, thanks.